Good morning, all of my friends, fellow travelers. On Spaceship Earth, it is I, and I am Guy. And this is the Stream for Accountability. Streaming for Accountability. So today we are working on something that I had kind of started yesterday because I had this sudden realization that all cockpits would be the same. It would all be the same. Everything would be identical. Everything would be the same. So I'm doing that now, and I have imported a human to make sure that everything is correctly set up, which of course I'm kind of observing it is not, in fact, correctly set up at all. That's all right, we'll get there. And the reason that we're doing this, of course, is because we want to make sure that this makes some logical sense. So, the realization also that some logical pieces need to be dealt with here. Like, for example, they will likely wear their spacesuits, and the spacesuits have wings and have had little bunny ear wings since I started this mess, because I kind of like those. Those are cool and neat and make it look neat. But it also means that we have to conform the cockpit a little bit to that. There. Of course, the control panel now is much bigger than I thought it was going to be. But this now at least makes some sense. Much better. All right. So all I'm doing is building a structure around here, which is a little easier to identify and manage. I don't think I want these to droop down too much. Like that. Just going to remove the ability to have the joysticks and pull them out and move them. In fact, these will probably cause some problems with those as well. So let's move that up. All right, looking to the side. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and extrude it out so that it's like so. The reason I'm doing this is so that I can take this centerpiece and move it forward, and then move this forward, so that we can put the joystick mounts on here. Those are the mounts of the joysticks so that they can be properly operated, properated. Wow, we're chasing an infinite problem here. All right. So we're looking at this. There are the two holders to hold on to the control podiums. They'll stick out from there. On the left side, we have control sticks. Okay, I should bring this in like so. And bring it down. We have to assume, of course, this will be in the hull of the spacecraft. So we sort of probably have to bring this down so that it fits inside the ring of the spacecraft to some degree. I know, weird, but true. It's an armrest. And once again, I have done the thing where I have impacted these two pieces. All right. Brought that in pretty tight. And then we'll build the chair. What? Yeah, yeah. That was a long meow. Yeah, it was a long meow. That's why. There's nothing wrong with a long meow, you know. Just that there is a meow. Yeah. No. Maybe. It's hard to get over here, though. But you haven't shown everybody your butt in a long time. You haven't shown anybody your butt. Nobody knows what your butt looks like. How do we know what kind of life you're going to lead if you don't show people your butt? Huh? 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 Yep, help me. That's fine. I appreciate you just being here. All right. Hey, Brent. Hmm. Hey, George. So I'm thinking this is a better choice right here. Take the chair and have two lone pieces but then slide to either side. Hi, George, says Brent. It does not surprise me. This also does not surprise me. It should, but it doesn't. Life is full of surprises. think I may have made enough errors on this one that I'm just going to start over. It'll be easier to do. It's totally fine, my friend. I'm just sitting here trying to get this done. Last night, I sort of realized that they'd probably have a unified cockpit. It's the same on every ship, so that way it's not you can pilot anything. They're all the same. And I kind of sort of pondered out what would that look like. And then I was like, well, I don't think, ADA compliance is not necessarily a thing, but definitely we have some problems with being compliant for some of our races. Like the Chakrana can't actually operate this control console at all. So I was like, I probably should fix this. And before we go too far, I mean, the reason why ADA compliance isn't a thing anymore is because they'll genetically correct your problems. There we go. Looks much better. It's also in the middle of that console to the right there, which means we should probably fix that. Not to say that they will not be compliant to people who need help, but if you're going to be a fighter pilot and you have a disability that has a problem with that, then you should probably get a genetic repair on it. Here's the bottom of the pilot seat. Shows a whole lot. Time for mid-show break. Oh. Should all stand up and stretch. All right. Mm-hmm. All right. Now we've built it in, so it's all one unit again. It depends on the defect, because I kind of thought about that as well. As I said it, I was like, well, yes, but if you are born, let's say, without any arms, do we just redesign the entire culture so that everybody uses their mouth to do a thing? We couldn't, really. Some things would just have to be corrected in order for you to interface with society, you know? Because there's some stuff that I can definitely think, okay, you're red green colorblind. And this is kind of a thing that's like, I've thought about this a lot since I realized that our traffic signals are set up in a way that they are constantly the same so that people who are red green colorblind can still detect it. And in that instance, it doesn't actually cause much harm at all. The red light must always be on top and the green light must always be on bottom. And then that way, if you're red green colorblind, you then go for the top light means stop and the bottom light means go, and you can acclimate in that way. But if we're talking about something like adjusting an object for one person, that would cause a complete redesign. In the case of, say, fighter craft, where you'd have to completely redesign the spacecraft in order to be compliant for the person who doesn't have arms, it's easier to just correct the person's arms. This brings to that question that we often ask, the ADDers ask. Yeah. It's about compliance to a certain thing. You want to make sure that people perpetually, or people all have the ability to, you don't want anybody to feel like they are broken, as often ADDers do, right? We are broken. But then it comes to okay, this is the old question that's often asked, which is, all right, would you as an ADDer, or in my case, would I as an ADDer, want to or be willing to have ADD corrected if it meant losing the creative aspect, the high brain function, effectively become normal brained? Would that be worth it? And my general answer is no. I think I'd just rather stay with all the pluses and minuses that go with having attention deficit. And so let's make sure that when we're here, we're not blocking forward visual vision very much. Sorry. Yeah, I see, like, that's up and then left to right. Yeah, we're good. The vision should be fine. Yeah, Down syndrome, or things that affect like your looks or something like that. I think that's up to you, because that's just a matter of acceptance in society. But if it affects the way that you operate, that's a different story. Would you want to? And that is a question I think we will have to ask very soon in our society. You know, what happens when you are genetically defective and they can find a way to fix it, but you're not really defective? You're just socially defective. Society thinks you're defective. That's when the question really starts to rise. It's you're not really broken. You just have a thing that society has decided you are broken on. I think we're already starting to ask that question with body dysphoria. Those people aren't broken. There's nothing wrong with them. They can operate just fine in society, but there's a lot of societal load up on it. If you're born male and want to be female, or born male and feel that you are female, or vice versa, there's really nothing broken about you. You can operate just fine in society. Everything operates completely the same. You can use the equipment that's around you. There's no need for in a work environment. There's no need for you to have to have concessions made. However, socially, there's all kinds of constructs that are in here, and these are all social constructs that may not really they have no bearing on whether you're a functioning member of society. And that's where we're going to have the question, because that statement I just made isn't a statement that everybody believes. They do believe that it isn't a hindrance to society. It's a hindrance to the proper function of humanity. And that's an interesting question that I think we as a culture are going to have to start asking at some point here very shortly. Do you make corrections on things that may or may not actually have bearing on whether you can do your work or not? That's going to be a fascinating question when we get to that point. Right? Right. That's in the Unity. What you're saying, some user, is absolutely banned. So you cannot change your looks because the diversity needs to be there. However, genetic diseases are anything that will kill you Darwinistically. That's permitted. And hi, some user. Good to see you today. But yeah, I mean, that is on that. Absolutely banned. Because of course you would need to do that. You need to, and then that leads to, well, okay, but being male and or female when you don't feel like you are male and or female is not a genetic defect. So then it becomes, right, we end up with all kinds of weirdness. I really feel like that is definitely a thing that would need to be banned. Don't mess with this. You don't need to mess with your looks. That's because, I mean, if that were the case, every single teenager that ever existed would change their looks like 20 times. They'd go out and get genetic modification all the time as teenagers. Because we don't actually get comfortable with ourselves until after teenagerdom. Right. And And that's the other thing is like, what determines a genetic defect? And so the line is whether the line is usually whether it impacts your effectiveness in society. And when you talk about governing societies, governing bodies, that, I mean, when we talk about like the unity doing that, making that call, the reason they make that call is because another section in here just fit that edge, but I'm not gonna, because that'll just slip right into place. So I mean, and there is a law, there is a specific law in the, if you remember the Pandict of Worlds, the Constitution of Worlds, there's a law that specifically says you can't modify except in sort of an emergency sort of thing. Can't remember what that law specifically said, but let's bring it up because it's in the Drive of Worlds here. Oh man. This is one where I don't have it set up in the way it should be set up. And it really should be set up somewhere like this. Nope, not this one. This one. No being should be denied the right to exist or live their life as they intend by the civilization unless their life or action poses a direct threat. No being shall be denied the right to have every chance to better themselves. No being shall be unnaturally crafted by another being. That's the one that's the big one. So this is Article 3 of the Constitution of Worlds. In the unity, you can't be unnaturally crafted. And this really should be, because I really should lay this out on one of my normal story cards, because this is a core piece of what was I looking for? Oh, I ended up all the way out of Bellatrix Rising. I'm like, wait, this doesn't make any sense. Right? And that's part of the problem. To the statement that some user is making. What does unnaturally crafted mean? So, Article 3 came from the concept of Star Trek's genetic gen mod ban. And so it's because one of the old Tamerlan stories concentrates on gen mod. And so it it uh, being genetically modified, because that does actually, I know it's strange, but there is a legit interesting statement to be made about um, being genetically modified and making yourself stronger and faster and all of those things, unnaturally altering and changing the nature of who you are. And so the question about what is unnatural, it's kind of difficult. I can see that being sort of a tough question to ask. What is unnatural? It's not necessarily shooting a hole in it, though. That's left open somewhat intentionally, because that allows us to ask that question. What is unnatural? The Constitution of Worlds bans you from doing this, making unnatural modifications. That's fine. What is unnatural? You know? Just like our Constitution of the United States, Constitution of the Worlds has problems. Article 5 says no being shall be denied arbitration by a recognized disinterested third party. What is disinterested? What is recognized? It's got ambiguity. And of course, the point, it's back to the letter of the law or spirit of the law. And then if you're going by spirit of the law, what's your definition? It's actually intentionally done because I kind of wanted to explore that. We keep firmly bringing up different parts of the US Constitution as hard and firm on this point, but loose on this point because it fits my agenda. And then it's hard and firm on this point, but loose on this point because it fits my agenda. And that's part of the problem every country has. And I didn't quite grasp that until I started until we started discussing Article 9 of the Japanese Constitution. Once Article 9 became a big deal, then all of a sudden I was like, ugh, now I see what the problem is. Right? What happens if they run into someone who's done an unnatural modification? That's the episode of Tamerlan. And now an episode of Bellatrix Rising. That was what happened. That's the point. What do you do? Moreover, what if you are the modification, but it wasn't you that did it? It was your parents. This is the thing that really makes me wonder. Like, the reason I wrote the story in Tamerlan was because, to me, the draconian statement of gen mods is absolutely forbidden and punishable in the Federation made me really think, okay, well, what do you do if you run into somebody who has been genetically modified and turned into Khan, Mooney, and Singh, and it wasn't Khan's fault? This Khan who's, maybe it's a good Khan, you know what I mean? Like maybe it's Khan, Mooney, and Singh superpower, Superman, super awesome, super fast, super smart, and they're happy. They write little books and make poems and fold origami and clip bonsai trees. You know what I mean? Like they don't have any, they're not bad. Well, they're banned. So when I made Article 3, in story, Article 3 comes from the AI wars, right? Because you can craft an AI any way you want. So if you built an AI, you could build it any way you wanted to. You could make them all compliant. You can, in fact, that's what caused the AI wars, was that the AIs were being intentionally modified to be compliant so that they would not rise up and become, a problem, which then became a problem, right? It was like, that was the issue. Then it was an issue, So that's where it's like, well, that's where Article 3 comes from in the Constitution here. Article 3 has changed since its original inception. And so, but it was changed during the AI wars to conform. So, but yeah, the ambiguity is intentional. Very intentional. And the questions that you're asking are questions we're going to have to ask in this story. This is the stuff though that makes these stories fascinating to me. The questions you guys are answering are the same questions that I asked at some point myself on this. Who determines whether you have a genetic defect? What is the line? What does unnaturally crafted mean? Who determines if someone's unnaturally crafted? If I have ADD and they wipe out all of the negatives but leave the positives, is that unnaturally crafting me? Moreover, some user is correct. Something like ADD is not necessarily a defect. It's only a defect because I don't operate 100% correctly in society. I make societal errors. I don't make work errors. My comics are still created on paper just fine. They still have the same artwork. They still have people. They still have, there's no error in my comics. It's not like my comics are, they come out always on, I can only draw on water or something, you know what I mean? Like, or I can't draw. So I just, put comics out that, have nothing in blank pages. I don't have a defect there. The problem is I say things sometimes where I make mistakes and make errors because my brain didn't quite get all of the pieces together on that one. That's a social defect. Can you fix that? Should you fix that? These are the questions, right? Do you call that an interface error? Oh no, guy is incapable of 100% of the time interfacing correctly with everybody. Not only that, ADD's problems are extremely subtle. They're very, very difficult to openly see. You don't really see the mistakes that are made, but there's a reason why I have not been in management my entire life. And that's because somewhere along the line, as an employee, somewhere I'll make a mistake and people will go, he's full of himself, or he just wants to insult people, or they run to some conclusion or something that's not necessarily accurate at all. And so that's always kind of the fascinating thing for me. You wouldn't know I'm defective. You can't tell. You can't walk up to me and go, whoa, guy, dude, I didn't know you were defective. You won't know. And the truth is, my defect is extremely small. It affects a very small aspect of my entire life. An important aspect, but a small one. The rest of it can be compensated for. I can make a compensation in some way or another. So I'm always kind of like fascinated by these things. I'm like, So Article 3 was designed so that I could make an entire story based around it. And it is open-ended. It's absolutely open-ended. Right? And now you guys have been brought into my bizarre little concept world here. You're welcome. Mm-hmm. But like we've been talking about, do you count not being socially connected correctly as something that needs to be corrected? Something like seeing or hearing. Do you count that? Down syndrome is another good example of something similar to that, right? Technically speaking, you can communicate, you can talk, you can operate. There's nothing actually wrong with you in that instance, in that degree, but it is definitely life impacting. That's the question. And that's the one where you're like, I don't know. What do we do? Right? This is why writing science fiction is fascinating sometimes. You get to ask these questions where you're like, I don't know. Not 100% sure I know the answer to this. I'm asking this question, but I'm not sure what the answer is. There we go. That worked. Isn't that nice? Look at that. That's cool. In general, I'm with you, some user. However, now we're back to that other question we just asked. You don't have blue eyes. You want blue eyes. Is that allowed? What if it becomes fashionable for everybody to have blue eyes? Do we just have the entire human race switch over to blue eyes? I think about this a lot because when I was younger, I really wanted brown eyes. Like when I was a kid, because my dad is, right, green eyes. My dad had brown eyes and they were so cool. I thought they were really nifty. The only reason I thought that was nifty was because I have blue eyes. And so I thought his eyes were really cool because brown eyes are cool, you know? Right. It's plastic surgery, but better. But when you change the genome of every human being to be blue-eyed, you've caused a change, an evolution. You've forced an evolution in society, right? It could, in theory, have a trend that ultimately wiped out a trait. If all of us decided we all wanted blue eyes, then there would be no more brown-eyed people because the trait would fade. And the real question then is that allowed? You know? Then you have the even more modified question, which is you're allowed to make those modifications, but only after you've reproduced. You're not allowed to have children after you have these modifications. They sterilize you. Is that reasonable? You know what I mean? Like you start asking all of these things, you're like, you know, woof, that's a question, right? We'll allow you to genetically modify yourself, but you have to be sterilized. You go, whoa, wait a minute, whoa. What do you mean sterilized? You know, now you're asking the really tough question, which is, can you do that? Should you do that? You know. There comes a time where you have to make a decision for your society as to whether you're doing a thing. And you have to make that call, you know? These things fascinate me, by the way. I mean, I know this is sounding really scary and stuff, but the truth of the matter is this is fascinating to me. Absolutely fascinating. You know? It's these moral dilemmas. What do you do with them? Right? But let's say, because there is a modification that was made prior to this law being put down and modified in a way whereby humans can breathe carbon dioxide atmosphere. So as long as the atmosphere is at least 20% oxygen, they can breathe it, even if it's 20% oxygen and 80% CO2. And that's so that they can interface with the Nazor, right? The Nazor, of course, use CO2 to operate their respiratory systems, and they give off oxygen, which makes it great to have a Nazor hanging around. But in that instance, we have to get over having CO2 poisoning, right? Because now we have to, in order to live in the environment, we have to have modifications for that. That's a natural modification, or is that an unnatural modification? Now you're kind of thinking that same problem, which is like, well, no, wait a minute. You know, is this a natural modification? Is this not? And that becomes the question. You need it to interface with the other people in your society. but back to what I was saying with the eye color, because we kind of walked off that statement, but I wanted my eyes to be brown because I was a teenager and kind of dumb. Now I'm pretty happy with who I am. You know what I mean? Like, I've gotten comfortable with who I am. If you can change on a whim what you are and who you are, that becomes another question, which is, should that be allowed? Right? Do you just consider the fact that you changed all of the pieces of your body around because you were a teenager and just going through the I hate the world and I hate everything about it and yada 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 and da 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 and so on and so forth? That question becomes, should that be allowed? You know, should you allow a teenager to change their eye color, their hair color, their gender, their, and only to come back to it later? Or moreover, as somebody who wanders off topic all the time and the topics evolve completely out, what happens if they change what they are only to find out that they didn't want to later on, or didn't need to, but they don't realize that? I mean, I guess that's my thought. It becomes that line of, do you force your people to accept themselves for who they are as a society? Well, maybe. I mean, I would assume, because there is what we call the age of minority and age of majority in in the uh, in the unity. When you hit age of minority for humans, that's puberty, and that puts you in provisional human or provisional adult mode. You're not an adult yet, but you have some agency. Then you hit age of majority, and then that's when your frontal lobe for humans is fully developed. That means that you now can be given your own keys to your own world and, hey, do whatever you want, man, sort of thing. So you could say you can't do any dramatic genetic surgery until age of majority. But it does sort of make me think about some of these things. Like, what do you do at this point? How do you fix that problem? What is the problem that you're trying to fix? It's I've got all these thought processes that go through this now, and I'm like, I think this one's called Sins of the Father. I'm writing all this down before I forget it. Okay. I have a reminder that I am about to go into my meetings. All right. I'm writing all this down because we just came up with a whole bunch of really good stuff. Let's see here. I'm thinking this through because I'm writing all this down. There we go. So here's the things I was thinking of. I'm gonna have to go pretty soon here. So here's what I was thinking. If you can change any part of your body on a whim, what would a teenager do? How do we balance learn to love yourself for who you are and change any part of you? I feel like this would be like a drug. You'd be able to modify yourself in any way and people would get addicted to it. And also, people who are genetically modified would still go through some kind of crisis of their character, but that crisis of that character, it makes us humble. It teaches us a little bit of humility. In other words, there's a reason why you'd want to make this a permanent, or want to make this law go into effect, because subtly, being able to accept yourself with your bumpy nose or with addicted to cosmetic surgery. You see that a lot. I see people who have gone way too far. Way too far, right? So, okay, guys, I've got to get off the line here, even though I know we're in a great discussion, but I have to meet with my advisor at 11 o'clock, academic advisor, and she has already sent the super threatening email of, okay, if you're not there at exactly on time, you will have to reschedule, and I'm booked all the way through February, so you won't be able to talk to me again until February. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna be totally ready. Make sure Microsoft Teams is up and running and all that stuff, so I don't have to mess with it. So I'm gonna get on out of here, but I'll be on tonight and I'll be on tomorrow. So we can continue this, some user, if you wish to continue this tomorrow, because it's fascinating to me. So I will see you at the next show. And as always, keep your eyes on the stars. Thanks for joining me, guys. Bye-bye.